Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for another Accordant and Sage webinar on estimating. Today, we're going to, the topic is leveraging models in Sage estimating, and it is our last one for the year. So any other presentations that you guys would like before the end of the year, please feel free to reach out. If we don't connect with you first, we would love to set up a one-on-one presentation with you guys. So just want to go through the agenda very quick. So what we're going to do in our presentation today is we're going to quickly do an item takeoff, an assembly takeoff. Then we're going to show you how to use a model in Sage estimating. So in just a minute, we're going to talk about what a model is and how it can be beneficial to your organization. We're also going to show you how to quickly put one together and talk about why we should use models in Sage. And then at the end, we'll have some time for questions and answers. So what is a model? A model is an aggregator. What it's doing is combining items and assemblies, any combination you wish, and it will be, those items and assemblies would be fed by a series of questions that you set up in what we call an interview. And the answers to those questions can be text, it could be numbers or sizes. We can also look up files. We can also include instructions and notes and include graphics. So you can actually sit down with your client or potential client and have an image of a previous building you guys have done and build that model with them. So, you know, you guys are making it a collaborative effort. So hopefully we'll give your client or prospect some confidence. So in these models, you know, we could put as few or as many items and assemblies as you want. So we can literally get up to hundreds of items and assemblies. So why should you use models? Well, it's the easiest way to create a quick conceptual estimate with minimal input. You could start this at the very early stages of your design process. And again, it allows you interaction with the client because you could sit down with them and build it. You know, ask them the questions that are in your models. You can make revisions to those models as you're sitting with them as well. And then it's all going to produce real-time results. It also gives you the ability to play what-if scenarios. So what if you change the height of a wall? What if you switched out the exterior facade of the building from brick to something else? So it allows you to quickly make those changes. And then we can also update the estimates without affecting any of our previous work. So, you know, if you guys are doing conceptual bidding, there's no more ballparking, right? Using models, you don't need to ballpark or guess what it's going to cost you guys and if you're going to make money or not. We can provide that conceptual estimate with real data behind it, with quantities and assemblies built in for you. So Mark Reich, Sage's senior field engineer, is going to drive our presentation today. So with that, I'm going to switch over to him and he will take us through the software.
Great, thanks, Michael. I welcome everybody here this morning for taking time to do this. Let me make sure I share the right monitor instead of the other one. So everyone should see on my screen now, should see our estimating product, which is empty because I don't have an estimate here at all going. So we're going to walk through how you get to a model and so forth, so everyone understands the concept of a model. Models are extremely powerful, and we have a lot of companies that use them, all the way from general construction to, we've got a big company called ATCO that actually builds modular buildings and job shacks and stuff like that, but also modular buildings for schools and everything. And they actually use that for models also. And it works very well, and it's customized models to their, you'll see, get an idea here of how that works. Someone may want to put themselves on mute because we can hear all their commotion. So if you're not on mute, please go on mute. Okay, so we're going to go in here and we're going to start, we'll just start an estimate from scratch. So I'm going to go to new, and let's just say this is modeling number 1. because we may go back and create another one, and I'm just going to go ahead and create an estimate in Sage Estimating. If you don't know Sage Estimating, we can actually you can actually fill in the information about the project here. I'm going to go ahead and just go bypass that. We can come back to that anytime, as you know. So I have a blank estimate here now with all of my columns and so forth, which we can change and adjust and so forth. But what we're going to start with is we're going to go to takeoff here, and we're going to show you how you do item takeoff. And this is doing a manual takeoff. If you want to know how to use our eTakeoff, which is a direct takeoff tool, next year we'll be having webinars on that for doing the 2D next generation takeoff. And if you haven't seen that, you really need to sit in to see that, because it'll blow your mind. So let's go in here. Let's say we want to do a little concrete. I know that most people on the line are general contractors. So we're going to go in here. And if you want to actually just do a footing, I can start off with my forms here, and we can just pick items. So I can do my footing forms. I can do my stakes. I can do a keyway on this. So I'm loading items that I want to actually include to do this for footing forms. And what I've got here is it's adding information here that I can fill in. So if I wanted to just take care of the forms here, we can actually put in the length of the form. So I can say, okay, this footing is 145 feet long, and it's 2 feet wide. And you notice I've got defaults in here. We can set defaults for the most common used items if you want to. So I'm going to go ahead and say that we want a 12-inch footing here. And we've got stakes every 10 feet and number of sides formed. I'm going to form both sides. And so I can keep adding things here. So if I want to go to forms, I can now come down into the rebar if I wanted to and say that we want number 4 rebar in here, and it's going to ask me some more questions. So it'll ask me, what's the length of rebar? What's the count on the length of the rebar? So we're going to say lengthwise, we're going 3 down the chute. And then widthwise, we're going to have every 2 feet. And then I'm going to come back here, and we can go down. Now I can scroll down, and I've got my database, so I can actually pick from items here. So I can go to concrete now and say I need 3,500 PSI concrete. And then I'm going to go ahead and just calculate this out. And there it calculates all of my quantities for the items that I need, all based off of input that we've put on these items here. And then I can send this over to my estimate. And now in my estimate, I've added those items. That's an item takeoff, okay? Let's take up one more, let's take it up a notch, and let's do an assembly takeoff for the same thing. Now in here, we've got a number of assemblies. As you know, some people say, well, I just want to do a conceptual one. And if that's the case, I'm going to do this one with no rebar, simple, just lineal feet of square footage here if I want to. But what I'm going to do here, and I'm just going to add a title to this here, and I'm going to say conceptual. Here, we're going to go and expand that over here. We've got our conceptual. That gives me the cost of everything. So instead of grabbing the items, I have an assembly that gives me all that based off factors for a simple assembly. I'm going to send that to the estimate, close that off. Oops, let's go back and let's do a different one here. Now I can also go in assemblies, and we can do a more complex one without rebar. Or if I want to come down here, I can actually do it with rebar, a complex one, and you'll notice it asks me a lot more questions and it has a lot more information to pick from. So I can still keep the same information here, and I'm not going to change any of this because it's the same thing we had before, but I'm going to say this is more complex and this is detailed. Okay, and so I'm going to go ahead and expand that here. I'll hit OK. Oops. Close that off. And now you'll notice that on our CSI format, I've done it 3 times, but it's got it by CSI. But I'd like to see this a little differently. So I'm going to go here and add my sequences, which means that I can actually look at it by assembly. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up by assembly and go over here. And when I click that, you'll see that here are the 3 that we did. There's the detailed one that we did. there's a conceptual one we did, and those are the items because they aren't in an assembly that we did. So you can see the 3 different ones that we did based on each of those assemblies. Well, an item and an assembly, that's just different ways and different levels of being able to get information to my estimate. But this particular webinar is about modeling. So let's go back to takeoff and let's do a model. What a model does is I can take the efforts of a single item takeoff and a assembly takeoff and put it together in an interview. And this is more of a parametric approach where it's top down. So if I'm actually working, let's go open up a model here, for example, and I've got a bunch of different models that we can use for. So let me expand all these into the models that we have. So I've got a concrete warehouse here. I'm going to look at my estimate here. Okay, this is my database here, so we're going to expand all these. And I've got a tilt up. Okay, why is that not? Bear with me here. I was just playing with these, so I've got to go back into my assemblies here. And oops, that's not assemblies, my models. I was playing with these and I didn't close them properly. So we have the same ones here. So let me close that model. Let me check the model first. So I'm going to check the model and then check it in. I was playing with these, so I'm going to go ahead and close that. That should show up then. So if I go to my takeoff here and I go to models, I don't know why that's not showing up. I have to apologize here. All these other ones show up. For some reason, it's not letting me use these. I updated, so it might be something like that. But to get that, let me close here and let's go another way to do this. So I'm going to show you what a model does. So in a model, for example, if I go open up this model here, it's an interview process. And this is actually me creating a model where I can actually add lines here and ask questions. So this can be an interview process where if I go to a client, you can show them some of the work that you've done here. And then as you scroll down, you can input information here. So you can put in the length of the building, you can put in the width of the building, number of bays. So this is for a concrete tilt-up warehouse. So I can put in the basics, and I may not even have plans. And I can put in this information here. I can put in site-related information, general information. And as I've done with that interview, this information here actually feeds the items and the assemblies that I've assigned to this model. So you saw how we did items individually and grouped them, and then we can group those items into assemblies. Now we can group both of them into a model and then have an interview. So it does that takeoff for me. So when I'm done with this, I can actually run through that complete takeoff. And so you can do that for a lot of different things here. If I want to, I mean, I've got metal buildings. These are all user defined by you guys. We also have foundation components like spread footings, caissons, piers, and caps. So if I go into this one here, you'll see that this interview here is specific to doing piles and caps. So if I want to break the building down into different areas, I can do that with modeling and then put all these together and create a whole project. So I can either do the whole project as a shell and then add other things to it. For example, we can get into structural framing. So I've got all of my, I can get into a waffle slab, for example, and here's all the information that I need to ask for a waffle slab. And I can get into wall systems. Get into a wall on a spread footing, concrete wall, and it asks me for the general information, and we'll take and input this to spit out the detail. So you get the idea of what it does here. I can go into interior for build out. I can have a standard build out here, and then you'll see here for this TI, it tells me general information, my interior ceiling requirements, and all of my other areas to do a rough layout, and then this will spit out an actual detailed estimate, and we'll do one of these in real life here. If I have a medical facility, if I'm remodeling something, for example. I can even add demolition things. So I can actually say I'm going to remove tile or walls or doors, and I can put the quantity in here, and it'll give me calculations for that. And then I can go in with my new stuff, interior, woods and plastics, and my special requirements that I have here to do, and then it will give me what I need there. So that's kind of how we put together a model. If I want to use a model, I'm going to go to takeoff, and we're going to go to model, and I'm going to pick which one. I'm going to go expand here. For some reason, I don't have these available to me, so I won't be able to use those. But if I wanted to use a model, let's say we're going to do a couple models here. Let's do the concrete spread footing. So I'll open that up, and you'll see here that all I have to do is answer some questions. So let's say this particular wall is 245 lineal feet, and the height of that wall is a 10-foot high concrete wall. Thickness of that wall is going to be 10 inches. And the footing width of underneath that wall is going to be, let's say it's 3 feet. And the depth of backfill that I'm going to, so if it's a 10-foot wall and everything, I'm going to backfill it for about 8 feet because it's going to be a basement. And then is there a French drain required? I can check that. And then I can just hit OK. Now, based on that, I'll close this. So we've got that. Now, if I want to, I can actually go change to the estimate. And that's one that we've already taken off here. And the green says I'm ready to generate it. But before we do that, let's go back and let's take off another item so we can do this several times. So we can do our tilt up and so forth. But let's come down here to that interior. And let's say we're going to do this standard office build out for a project, and we want to answer those questions. And we can do this in front of the client, so we can break it down by components and then build this in front of a client for, negotiated or design build. And this is just for my first blush estimate, and then we can go in and make some adjustments to the estimate. So I might put in the number of weeks here, and we're looking at this is we're looking at about 10 weeks for this project. It's a big project. I want to include my cost for blueprints. Fire protection I want to have included on that also, so let's do that. And what's the square foot of the office? Well, this is going to be 12,000 square feet of office space. I'm going to use a sub for drywall. And what's the lineal feet of partition? So my total lineal feet of partitions in here is going to be 3,400 lineal feet. And the height of those partitions are all 10 feet. And then I say, well, the sub, I sub out the acoustical. Yes, I'm going to sub that out too. And the square foot ceiling grid, square foot of that, it's going to be 12,000 square feet. Same thing. And do I want to use 2x2? If I don't check this, it'll go to 2x4. So I'll leave that and say, well, we're going to use 2x4, so I'm not going to do that. Number of entrance doors. Oh, we've got 4 entrance doors on this thing. Number of standard doors. We've got 23. And number of door closers I need to have. Well, I'm going to need them on the entrance and that, so there's 27. So I'm going to put in 27. So I'm putting in just raw information because I don't have a set of blueprints. And this is just what we've a bubble diagram that someone has, or if I had a set of blueprints, I could put that information and transfer it from takeoff to this too. So I look in here and I look at the cabinets, and we've got a total of 56 lineal feet of base cabinets, and wall cabinets. We've got 21 feet of wall cabinets, and then countertop, lineal feet of countertop. We've got 30. Let's say we've got 45 lineal feet of wall cabinets, and lineal feet of cornice. So I can actually say, if we're doing some detail there, we've got 1,200 lineal feet of cornice to put in. Chair rail, we've got another 1,650 lineal feet. And again, these are questions that you guys can make up based on the model that you create. Lineal feet of wood base here. We've got a lot of wood base in here. We've got about 4,500 lineal feet of wood base to put in, probably more than that. Lineal feet of full height cabinets. We've got 10 feet in one area that we've got. Shelving, we've got another 28 feet of shelving that we're putting in. So now I'm getting into, we've got 8 soap dispensers, number of lockers. If we've got any, we don't have any lockers, so we won't put any in. Number of mirrors, we've got 12 mirrors, and number of towel bars. we've got 10, and number of grab bars, we've got 7, and fire extinguishers for that size here, we're probably going to need probably 10, and number of fire extinguisher cabinets, we're going to need 10. We're going to put them all in cabinets, and that's my interview. So this whole thing here for my build out, we can go through and just do the conceptual with an owner right in front of them, or just do this for ourselves to come up with a rough magnitude estimate that we're going to deal with. So now we've done those 2 things. So I'm going to go over here, and it shows that we've gotten 2 that we've done. So if I generate, so if I go to this first one here, and I generate that, I'm going to generate that to my estimate, and it's going to go through that interview. Actually, I can do both of them. I can check them both here, and I'm going to hit OK, and it's going to generate both of those. So there's my footings, there's my interior, and now I'm complete. Now notice how in the background my estimate has all been blown out, and these have all been generated. So since these are assemblies, these are all items, so you can see my items actually added to the items that we did before with the item takeoff. So some of those things in my model were items. Some of those were, so there's my general conditions for this project that were handled just from the duration that we put in. It said the duration, so it calculated how many months that we have, which was so many weeks that we put in. I did say I wanted a French drain, so there's my information on the French drain. These are the 2 that we did before. This is what it did afterwards, and then there's the straight wall and the doors that we've got here. So these are all been done from that model. I can go to sequences here. Let's go to my home key here. Let's go to sequences here, and let's make a new sequence here. Let's add a new sequence, and let's go, and we can actually say sort this by model, because we did those 2 models. So let's just sort this by model, or let's do it this way. Let's sort it by model and assembly. Okay. So I'm going to hit OK. Just that quick, I can come over here and change this and say, okay, there's the assembly. I need to do this in a default layout here. So, or let me add the model here on this. Insert, come down to my models here. So there's my model right here, spread footing model, or there's my model right there. And there's the model that we did for the other, and they're all broken up between those 2 models, and these were non-model items. So what we did first, and then what we did by the models. So we can slice and dice this any way you want. We can go in and change the adjusted prices. We can copy this and then go change it and do a comparison. So if I wanted to do this, I could actually copy this and then do a comparison between the 2 and see exactly what's going on between the models, and go back and change my model and see what happens. And so there's quite a few things that we can actually do with this. I can go see my total so far, where my add-ons are, and I can see exactly what my markups are here for total, and then my total project cost to date so far for these items that we've taken off. Now we can play with these numbers just like you can with any of them. We just compiled it through a model, so we can come in here, and if I want to, I can go back to my information here, and we can put in a job size, for example. This we said was a 12,000 square foot item building here. So we'll go ahead and add that to it. And what that will do is it'll give me my cost per square foot here so far for what I've got in this building. And then there's my total costs. And if I scroll up here, you can see here are my hard costs for my labor and all my cost categories, and how many hours I've got. If I'm doing production rates, it's already got that in there because it's feeding off your database. And then here are all the add-on items that we have for general conditions and so forth. And one of the things I forgot to do here is, let me go ahead and add it right here. Let's insert another add-on, and let's put that, oops, I don't want to edit it. I want to insert one. So let's go ahead and insert an add-on here. And I want to put in that bond. We forgot to put in our bond. So I add a bond here, and you'll see that my bond is 34. Now, how's that calculated? So let's go ahead and show you how that's calculated. It's calculated when you create these add-ons. We've got a lot of power in these add-ons, so where we can add things. And that means that this is a bond that's calculated based off of the bond calculations I get from my bond company. I just put in my step ratio, so it's 1.2% for the first 50 and 0.9, 98% for the next 100 and so forth. And you can have multiple bonds in here set up for the different types of work. So if you're a contractor that does a lot of variety of work, you might have several bonds and they apply to the different aspects of work. And then the other ones here are all calculated. This tells me what my average percentage is of those, but they're calculated in different ways. Now, this allocatable here that's got this checked off allocatable simply means I want to bury it. So if I scroll all the way over to the right here, you'll notice here for each of my line items that I have, let's collapse these. Okay, let's collapse these. So let's collapse these. So what we're down here is we're looking at those that were unassigned, not through models. Here's our two models. There's the total cost for labor for that model, total cost for material for that model. Here we've got $96,000 in subs because we're having them do the drywall and so forth. And then I've got some equipment costs in here. So my grand total over here for this cost is $198,000 and then $40,000 for the other model. Well, what I can see in add-ons here, these add-ons are the total add-ons that we have down here are buried in this. And when I add those proportionate to the items, my price then goes up. So this is before add-ons are allocated to that. This is after add-ons are allocated. And so far, that particular model represents 81% of our project and 16%. So we balance these out. If I don't want those allocated and I just want to deal with raw costs, I can come down here and uncheck these boxes here, or I can actually just have a couple checked, hit my save button for this, and all of a sudden, these numbers are the same on both sides. Okay, still the same percentages, but they're the same because I haven't allocated. So if you wanted to just say, I want to allocate 2 levels, I've got a profit and I want to allocate it, and I want to allocate these architectural fees or just these general fees here, I'll just take those 2, and that's what I've allocated. So now I've got those built into my prices here. So we can spread, you can do this for front loading if you want to, because I can actually go behind the scenes and decide what I want to put that into, so I can put a lot more in my general conditions or a lot more up front for my funding, so that it'll fund my project. There's all kinds of games you can play with here. Let's expand these all out here. The other thing we can do is you can actually come in and adjust numbers. So for example, now that I'm dealing with the dollars of everything that we've done here, let me get rid of some, we can assign vendors if we want to. I'm going to get rid of this column so we can, I'm going to hide that column, and I'm going to hide this column here. We can actually assign subcontractors. And so we can actually come in here if we want to. Now, if I want to, I can just have a different layout here and just say, let's just show me my totals layout. And there's my total layout. Let me go back and insert, because I didn't set this up in advance. Let's go back. Let's do a different one. And then let's add something here. So I can adjust these very quickly. So we can add and delete items if we want to. Let's go ahead and do it by model again. So we've got our models, so forth here in detail. What I can do here on this particular model, for example, I can say, you know, I think we can adjust this labor column here for, you know, we can do it a little faster, or maybe my material I can get better deal on. You know, so what I could do is I can actually go through and I could highlight just all my material for this concrete wall. And then I can right click on this and I can say adjust. And I can do all my adjustments here from my model and say, you know, I can actually add or deduct by percentage, a multiplier, divide, I can replace, I can add or I can spread dollars, positive or negative dollars on this, or whatever. Then I can finalize it or undo it. So let's say we wanted to decrease this by 2%. So I'm going to say -2, and we're going to go ahead and hit OK. And right there, we just decreased it by 2%. Now I'm down to $31 a square foot. But you'll notice here that those items that are red are the individual items that were affected. If I hold my mouse over it, you'll see the original number and then the new number here. Now, what I would have done is I would have gone up to my file and copied this estimate and then had that as my original and then make these adjustments on my copy. So I'd have my base estimate and my Rev 1. And then I can make these changes. I can do a comparison report right on the screen where I can compare them side by side. Or I can actually go to my reports and we can do a variance between the two. And now I'm on my way with a negotiated bid or a design build to come up with some numbers. So here I've adjusted just my labor numbers in here for this by 2%. Now, if I want to, we can come down here, in fact, and say, well, we've got a number to hit. You know, we've got to hit $30 a square foot. So I type in $30 a square foot, and we've still got to make up $21,000. Well, I can still go through in each column or items and adjust them by those different ways. Or if I want to, I can just come to the end here and I can say, let's go ahead and spread the variance over the entire job. So it's going to go to the total amount column here. It's going to spread that balance, which we have here of $21,320. And I'm going to say yes. And that's going to achieve my job here. So now my total for the job is 30,000, and everything's been changed on my spreadsheet to tell me here's the original, there's the new one. So I can actually see where I'm hit. Now, if I wanted to not hit certain things, then I would actually do the adjustments the other way and be selective about it. But what we're giving you is the tools to be able to adjust this and work this into a final estimate, if you want to, all the way from a model if you'd like. You know, or I can add items, or I can delete items, or replace items. We can do all kinds of things with this, more than we have time to show here. But we can actually get this. Now, if you say, well, shoot, you know, I've done all this and I wanted to do a copy, I forgot to do a copy. I can right-click on this, I can hit my adjust column, and I can come down here and say, oh, I was just kidding. We have a forgiveness button, undo all adjustments. So I click that. Even my labor ones, everything's back to normal. I'm back to my 31. There's my original. And then I can actually go over here and do what I wanted to do, which was copy that estimate. And that's my number 1. So this is number 1 here, and I'm going to say Rev 1, because that's my original up there. And I'm going to close my estimate so it'll copy it. And now I have my Rev 1 estimate here. Let's go back and open up the other one. So I'm going to go back and open up my model number 1. So now I have them both here. Now, if I want to, I can actually just grab this, bring it down here, and now I can compare them side by side. There's my model 1, my Rev 1. So I'm over here. These totals represent the one that I'm highlighted here. If I highlight over here, these totals represent that. But let's go over here and we're going to make those changes again. Let's say we need to do this at $30, so we'll just do that again. And we've got to do that. We've got to make up 21,000. We'll just right-click on this and we'll do the spread. And I'll say yes. And I've got multiple monitors, so my windows show up into the monitors. We'll spread that over. So now this job over here, we're at $30 a square foot. This job, we're at the original 31. So now if I want to, and I want to look at these by models, do them both by models. Let's come down and let's see that model there. Let's come over here. And now I can do those models side by side, and I can see, if I want to, the dollar changes that are here compared to here, and I can go through each one at a time if I want to. I also have the ability in my assemblies here, I can actually review the assembly for the backfill here and see what my information was for that particular part of the model, and I can see my audit of the information that was filled in based off of my interview, all my factors. And if I want to, I could actually go in here and change some of that. Say, well, in this case here, there was a difference change. Actually, the backfill here is only going to go to 7, and the material is going to change to stone. We decided to change that. We're going to do wall bracing. Bracing size is there French drain? We decided no, we're going to do something different. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to replace that, and this is going to adjust, and there's my new price based on how me changing that. Well, here's my audit for me doing that. So my review, there's the original that we put in. Here's where it backed it out because I put in some new original information, and you notice it doesn't have the drain information here because I said no, and I can see where that's at. And that now is my audit, which keeps track of on each item and my new costs there, and I hit OK for this, and we close that. And now these prices have changed even more based on these because I didn't change this one over here. So we can, let's go to that model here that we were talking about here. So we can actually see the differences in those models here. If we go over to the very far right on each of these, we can see what our totals are different. You know, 40,000 over here. Through the changes we made here, we're down to 27,000. So I can play this what if all day long, and it keeps track of it. So I don't lose everything. I don't change my original estimate because I can call this my original now, and then this is my Rev 1, and then I can say, well, before we make any more changes to Rev 1, let's copy it and make it Rev 2, and now I've got images of my first estimate, my Rev 1, and now I'm on my Rev 2 estimate, and let's go. But all this can be fed through a model. So that the whole purpose of this is to show you how you could actually take advantage of a model to produce an estimate to do your what ifs and manipulation, just as simply as you could do items and assemblies. So it's just another quicker, more efficient way to do a takeoff, and also to enable communication with your client if you're doing those. Because I know a lot of times contractors will do, if you're not doing competitive bidding and you're doing negotiated or design build, you're going to do a conceptual, you know, takeoff based with no prints, and then when I get prints, I want to be able to do that in more detail. And then you can do that with our 2D takeoff or 3D takeoff product, and then still compare the things together, because you can compare any estimate together that you want. So I hope this really gives you a good idea, a flavor of modeling. There's more here, but not enough time to show that. I want to leave time for questions. But if you're really interested in modeling and would like to go into that deeper as it relates to you, please get a hold of us. Get a hold of Michael or Rob, and we'll sit down and do a one-on-one and actually show you how models could work for you and show you with your system how that can happen and what makes sense for that, if you want to take advantage of it. If you already have our product, you have Core Plus, you own models. There's nothing more to buy. If you don't, then you just have to add that module, or if you don't have a product at all, you'd want to buy our Core Plus product because it contains models. So with that, I'll give it back to you, Michael, and we can open it up for questions.
Great, thanks so much, Mark. And I will just switch it back over to my screen. And guys, we have a couple minutes left. Please feel free to use the question feature in our webinar to ask any questions you may have. We'll leave it open for a couple minutes. If not, we will reach out to you guys to follow up and hopefully schedule a presentation if you guys aren't using models yet. Okay, so we do have a question from Domingo. Can we map models with eTakeoff instead of plugging quantities by hand on the interview?
Currently, the answer is yes, but in a different way, and we're working on that. in the next year to change that so we can integrate directly with models. But right now, what we can do is turn that model interview into an Excel spreadsheet, and I can pre-fill that from eTakeoff. And then when I go to models, I just say, use this spreadsheet information, and it pre-fills all my model. So from that perspective, yes, and that's as direct as we can get with models. eTakeoff is evolving. So, and we the other items first, assemblies and items first, the models is the next one. So we're still working on that, but there is a way to do that through Excel, which is very effective and it's very easy to do. So the answer is yes, and then it will get better.
Great, thanks, Mark. Another question from Domingo. When you were doing the comparison side by side, can we synchronize both pages so when you scroll down on the estimate, it moves with the other estimate, i.e. your base and Rev 1?
That is on the enhancement list. In fact, the enhancement list is so I can even open up, I can have two totals, the total at the bottom of each, if I want to, instead of one total by focusing on one or the other, scrolling together. That is on our enhancement list for next year, and that will be out either in 1911 or 1912. If it's not in the first part, it'll be in the second part. So we have two releases coming out next year with major enhancements, and that is on the list. So that's good observation. It also means that I can open up my edit window for that edit assemblies on each side at the same time and run two scenarios at the same time to see how that's going. So it's going to give you a lot of flexibility. And you can open up depending on the size of your monitor. My monitor is pretty small to see sometimes because I've got it in a pretty high res, but you know, I have three monitors because I'm doing different things, and I'll have takeoff on one and I'll have the estimating on the other. But you can actually stack up as many estimates in this window as you want, but it's going to get smaller for each estimate, so you can actually do that. Now, if you want to compare it on paper, you just do it through the report, but you can do that on the screen. Good questions.
Yeah, awesome. So coming down the pike for you, Domingo, great question. Alrighty, so that wraps up his questions. Let's give it another minute, see if we have any others come in. If not, we will conclude the presentation. Like I said earlier, guys, last one for the year, but we have lots more coming next year. So that schedule will be released in the next couple of weeks. So stay tuned for that, and we'll cover more topics. We'll get into the newest version of Sage estimating. Talk about some new features that are coming down with eTakeoff as well, and then dive into more features in estimating that you may not be using currently, like alternates.
I might add that, you know, bringing up the company Atco, who's been doing this, been using our product now for 25 years. They're a company out of Canada with 2 offices in the U.S., and they build modular buildings. You know, so they do job shacks, they do school annexes, they do all kinds of. And then they're actually getting into hotels now, where they're stacking them and combining to build a hotel, and they're doing a number of hotels for the Hilton Corporation. Which is interesting, and when they're done, it doesn't look like it's been put together with modules, so it's really interesting. But they have models. They use models extensively for different types of units that they create, and they have a model for each unit. I think they're pushing 50 different models right now, and so they go to that unit and they can do a very quick, complete takeoff there, and then fine tune it. Very powerful, very powerful. I have a lot of general contractors that use it for their first blush estimate for dealing with a customer on a negotiated or design build situation. Works great because they can interact with the customer right at the very beginning, you know, and then go do the detail. And then with the other tools that we have, you can respond to those customers very quickly with accuracy and accountability without having to spend weeks and months to get something back to them in a different way. So just wanted to make sure I added that.
Yeah, awesome. Thanks for the insight, Mark. And yes, this webinar will be uploaded, but you will also receive a copy in an email if you have attended, or if any other members of your organization registered for the webinar. They will also receive a copy if they weren't able to make it this morning. So with that, guys, we will conclude. Thanks again. Here is our contact information for myself and Rob Napa. And for all the attendees today, we will reach out, follow up, and see if we can provide any more service to you guys. So have a great rest of the day and a happy holiday season, happy and healthy new year, and we will see you guys next year.